Florida. Dr. Abhi, thanks for being with us today, my friend.
Ken, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Hey, why don't you take just a second and let our audience know a little bit about who you are and what you've got going on?
Sure, happy to. So, at a fundamental level, I'm a very curious person. I'm an anesthesiologist by training, entrepreneur, started and sold a couple companies, and right now working on a really exciting project in the healthcare space where we are using sound in a real novel way to visualize the body and then interact with this new tissue layer. You've heard of it, the fascia, right? So using the fascia to remodel the body in ways that were previously not possible. So what that means is we're really able to alleviate a lot of suffering that otherwise, wouldn't be possible.
I know I've seen you work with some athletes and some different people like that. Talk to me about the process of kind of the discovery of where you're at right now and kind of what led you down the road to what you guys are working with now and kind of the breakthroughs you guys are working with now.
Sure. So I think, this story is actually quite germane to, what you guys focus on here, which was really all about mindset. And I was training quite intensely with some pro tennis players a couple years ago. And, just the wear and tear of my body at being with 36 at the time, going through medical school, residency, all of that. I wasn't really ready to be sore. So consequently, I was searching for answers, and I spoke with my orthopedic buddies who really never gave me what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of breakthroughs, if you want to call it that, are a product of self-need. You're trying to fix a problem that you're experiencing personally. And furthermore, kind of required, at least for me in this case, to almost have like a delusional sense of self-belief in a way. There's a really amazing Sanskrit word called sankalpa, which, you should look up. It would fit perfectly with your audience. It's sankalpa. And what that word really means, and it's a beautiful word, basically means, putting your entire essence, all of your energy into a singular focus and literally, making it happen, or at least believing in yourself so much that you're going to try 150%. So what do I mean for me specifically? So it's conventional wisdom that scar tissue in the body is not able to be removed or reprogrammed. And when I was scanning my own body, trying to figure out what was going on, I noticed patterns in the ultrasounds that had never been discussed or commented about. So fortunately, but unfortunately, right, human suffering is kind of universal. So the same problems that I was afflicted with, undoubtedly others were as well. So what I started to see was it seemed like the tissue or the part of my body that, sits in between the skin and the muscle, that was the layer that seemingly all the problems were coming from. And there wasn't any textbook for me to refer to this, nor were there any scientific papers. So it took a lot of sleepless nights, self-belief, psyching myself up to do the following, which I'll tell you. So once I saw the problem, I started experimenting on my own body, using syringes that I loaded with these placental proteins, which at the time theoretically would be able to help with this improper tissue. So really, I started with my neck, and we found that it was almost, like the turn of the century. I don't know if you saw the show, The Nick. It was a great show about, doctors discovering things at the turn of the 1900s. But essentially what we found was there are a lot of suffering or symptoms that people are dealing with. For example, let's say you have knee pain. You go to your orthopedist, you get an MRI and an X-ray, and neither of those two studies are conclusive. Then where do you go? And, this is the scenario that basically 80% of people are in. The more intense one's life, typically, the more likely this is going to happen. So, in programs like, what you guys are doing or the Tony Robbins community, you have a lot of people who are very strong-willed, and therefore, they're just trying to power through the pain,
Right.
And one of the ways they do that is just lose themselves in work. But I really it really just annoyed me that I was having to take away so much of my attention, to always focus on these parts of my body that were problematic, so to speak. So, it really then just became a function of, okay, we think that we can reprogram the body by giving it the right instructions. And now let's try to do this as much as possible and on as many different people as possible. I will caveat all of this with the fact that it's all FDA approved. It was really just using this material in a new way that people hadn't really thought about. So I've been very fortunate, over the past 2 years. We've gotten to work with some very high profile athletes, CEOs, et cetera. I can tell you one in particular that's really making me happy is Miguel Cabrera. Mm-hmm. So, his resurgence really, obviously, he put in a lot of work, but he spent the entire off season with me. And we essentially remodeled his body, regenerated, various joints, cleared out scar tissue in muscles, tendons, etc. And essentially, we rewound time, so to speak. And now we're seeing the proof in the pudding as, he's playing really, really well. Seems to have gotten his groove back. So that's just one example.
There's a couple things that you said that I think are fascinating. You kind of introduced yourself earlier. I did some research on you. Obviously, you were one of the top anesthesiologists in South Florida. Yeah. And not just the curiosity factor, but really, I wrote this down. And it's the same thing in business. I've got in my journal, I write down every morning, what problem can I solve today? And literally, you had a problem with you, and out of your own pain, others found freedom and healing.
That's right. Exactly.
So it's the same. I love the concept because it's the same thing in business, which you're in business, but you're doing it for a higher purpose. Talk to me about that, about that, sure. About that transferable principle.
Well, I wouldn't say a higher purpose. I think a lot of business, when for the right reasons, are just as admirable and benevolent. I can tell you that I think the commonality is people who are unsatisfied with what they see as, and taking that as, accepting that as the truth that is static. There's a great quote by Gandhi where he says, be the change you want to see in the world. Mm-hmm. And that really resonated with me. And when you look at a situation, and unfortunately for this country and really the whole world, Medicare, the healthcare system is kind of in a state of flux. And the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of suffering that's happening that necessarily shouldn't, people shouldn't have to be burdened with, but the healthcare system just doesn't seem to be able to adequately, take care of everybody. And going through training and then, working as a physician, I just, I got in trouble, honestly, because I just question everything, so when you're looking at something and you're kind of asking your supervisors, like, is there a better way to do this? Because it just doesn't seem like it makes sense. The kind of troubling thing I found was, and I think this maybe even is the case in business, in large organizations, the larger you get, the more adverse they are to change. You have people that are in certain positions that really, they don't want to rock the boat, and there's not a lot of incentive to take a large risk, and the fat tail risk of getting wrong, or being wrong could be devastating for them professionally. So, I think you were kind of alluding to it, it takes kind of a kind of crazy person like me, like you, like other people who just have this fire inside of them, and they're going to not take no for an answer, whether they get in trouble or they don't. And, I'll even say it, right? Everybody told me I was crazy when I was doing this, because literally it's not supposed to be possible. And I just kept thinking, like, mate, if a woman can make, if you really stop and think about this, when a sperm and an egg come together, you go from like something invisible to, in 9 months, let's say a 10-pound baby. I mean, that is incredible, with no errors, and all of this stuff being built, this machinery, which then, we come out of the womb, and all of us are proof that this placental recipe is indeed, in my belief, the most powerful life force, that we are aware of. So it was really thinking, okay, why can't we harness this? Can we trick the body into thinking, when Ken is not in the womb, but, you sprain your ankle, but can we trick your ankle into thinking it's inside the womb thereby healing in a way that is more akin to what a fetus does, which is basically with no scar tissue, as opposed to what an adult does, which unfortunately, the furthest time progresses, the less efficient we are in healing, right? Which is why. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so after I played basketball for an hour and a half yesterday and I couldn't get out of bed this morning at 52 years old, I should have called you to come down there.
You absolutely, hey mate, you absolutely should. And I'll do you a solid. You can come down here and we'll take care of you because, you just said it, right? You probably love to ball.
I do, man.
Yeah, there's other activities you really enjoy. And I personally, as a doctor, would be very uncomfortable if you came to me and I said, Ken, unfortunately, you're just not going to be able to play basketball anymore because you're an arbitrary number, 52, 51, whatever it is. That's kind of soul crushing for people because I would be the same way. If somebody told me, hey man, you can't play tennis ever, or you can't play music because your hands hurt, that would be a really tough pill for me to swallow. And I think, unfortunately, with what's going on in the world today, especially, a lot of people are under a lot of stress, both mentally and physically. It's almost even more important for all of us to be able to access these outlets that allow us to stay sane, and decompress, because especially, when you're going after it, whether it's in business or entrepreneuring, you got to be able to have that balance.
Talk to me about, one of my real good friends, he's an orthodontist, one of the top orthodontists here in Atlanta, played basketball at Duke for Coach K. He's an entrepreneur as well. I get to interview a lot of really cool, special people, but it's not often when you interview a physician, whether it be with Mark in the orthodontist field or you with anesthesia, who couple the word physician and entrepreneur.
Sure.
So I love that aspect of what you're doing. Talk to me about some of the roadblocks.
Sure.
Some of the, because you just said it just a minute ago, everybody told me I was crazy when I wanted to do this.
Look, everybody told me I was crazy. One, fortunately, this wasn't my first business, so I was acutely aware of everything I didn't know how to do, And the first time around years ago, it was trying to get up the mountain yourself, and you realize while it may make you feel good from an ego standpoint, it's just like a struggle, Then there's just why put yourself through that if you're not even guaranteeing or optimizing your chance of success? So I would say probably the smartest thing I did was realize I probably suck in business compared to other people, and, as luck would have it, really have been blessed to be working with some brilliant people who've been to the best schools, for business and their other specialties. And really, I kind of relate everything back to music and sports, and it's, you only get a beautiful song or you can only play a game when you have multiple players staying in their same lane, but being aligned onto the greater goal, which is the ego doesn't matter for us with our business. It's the only thing really that matters is, are people getting better, and then can we then spin out innovation from these various ideas, or as you said, solutions that we are ideating and then, delivering them to the greater public. So I'll give you an example. We have a piece of software coming out, really exciting. The Miami Heat are using it now, and TB12 should start using it in September. And this is basically called ScarMap, and we've created a AI engine that analyzes the ultrasound and kind of looks at it the way I do, evaluating this fascia and other soft tissue. And the thought there is look, Ken, I'm sure I don't know what your shoulder situation is. I'm sure you've been told bone on bone, this, that, and the other. Right. Hopefully they haven't told you need surgery, and hopefully you don't. But the long and the short of what I'm trying to say is that it's hard to solve a problem if you can't see it, and unfortunately MRIs are only so sensitive, and a lot of what most people are dealing with are not structural problems, meaning your bones aren't falling apart at 52. I mean, you're a healthy guy, but there's a wear and tear component that is unavoidable, just as if, you were a Formula One car, or a rally car. I mean, or a Mercedes, you got to go for your 30,000 mile tune-up, and what's interesting is that concept doesn't really exist in medicine right now. You don't go at 30, at 40, every 10 years and get this tuning, and because you don't, it's just a matter of when, not if, when, you're going to hit the pothole or you're going to get the flat tire, or et cetera. And I think that's what most people are actually dealing with.
So just a heads up, I was born in Detroit. I'm a Tigers fan, so I love Miggy.
Love it.
So exactly right.
Hey man, I'll get you assigned whatever you want, man.
I'd love to. Hey, talk to me real quick about so you're working with him.
Yeah.
And I know we don't play what if.
Yeah.
And I know you've overcome a lot of obstacles. People said you're crazy. You can't do this. It's never been done before. So you plowed through all of those objections.
Yeah.
So what do those conversations look like now that you're seeing him compete at a level he probably literally did 10 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
12 years ago. And he's competing at that level now. What does that do to your enthusiasm?
It's very inspiring. It makes me feel good that I'm not crazy, and neither is everybody else here. Most importantly, with him personally, he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And he's just a great example of what pain can do to somebody, it's not just him, it's everybody. And being in chronic pain, he's played sports his whole life, that catches up to you, and the problem is that we don't live in a vacuum. So even though you're in pain, it's not just you that's affected, your wife, your kids. It becomes a ripple effect that is a lot more problematic than I think people actually realize. It's not just one person in pain, it's like a whole nucleus of people. So what I'm most happy about is, the times we've spoken where, he's super happy. He's able to be himself, which is, he's a jokester, he's obviously supremely talented, but he's enjoying himself and what he loves doing, which is playing baseball, playing with his kids. Just like, if we were to treat you love playing basketball, it's letting people resume what they love doing, what they're passionate about. Because in my mind, what is life about? Sure, we have the job that's a grind, but for folks that are listening to this program and are kind of seeking to create their own destiny, or kind of proactively live their life versus reactively, you gotta, just as well as I do, you gotta be able to put everything into what you love doing, and that can't waver, it's gotta be unrelenting. And when you're up all night, you gotta just keep going. And being in pain, I think, really prevents a lot of people from actualizing their potential.
You said a word several times just a minute ago, and it was risk.
Yeah.
So you're one of the top anesthesiologists in your field and in South Florida, and then you just go, hey man, I want to do this. I want to solve this problem.
I had a really, I practice anesthesia kind of in a semi-traditional sense because I've had companies since I started training, but I was working, with one of the top plastic surgeons in the world, obviously super busy. We had a great gig going, and everybody thought I was totally nuts when I left it, walked away, including him. But it's kind of cliche, but there's that Steve Jobs, one of his commencement addresses, where he talks about the importance of having the faith and trust to know or believe that the dots are going to connect moving forward, even though you only do looking backwards, right? And you just have to. And maybe this is where, the introspective part of entrepreneurship, Elon Musk once said, entrepreneuring is like, eating glass, chewing on glass and staring into the abyss. There's lots of times where it's just miserable, and you're second guessing yourself, because if you're doing anything hard or worth doing, it's not going to be easy. Otherwise, everybody else would be doing it, but you just got to, I think the main thing is you got to be honest with yourself. You got to really dig deep and then try to validate in the right way. Like, am I crazy or am I not? I had to figure that out first after I really believed in what I was doing. I tried it on myself because I just didn't think it would be right to try it on anybody else. Once the nature of what we're doing is very safe. So, the side effect profile is very, very low, which allows us to kind of do this. But it literally was, okay, I've proven to myself. Now, can I prove it to this person? Now, can I prove it to Ken? And then it's just literally a domino type of reaction. So over the last 2.5 years, we've been really fortunate that people have, put their faith in what we're doing. And I don't want to make it seem as though it's magic and everybody gets better immediately. There's obviously been a tremendous amount of learning and iterating on what we're doing, but where we are now, I'm really happy with, and kind of where we're headed, I'm even more excited about.
Talk to me real quick about, okay, so we talked about risk. You talked about, leaving one of the top plastic surgeons.
Sure.
And you said I had it made and you left. He thought you were crazy. You probably thought you were crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about that gap between then and, oh crap, this might work.
So I would, I think honestly speaking, having a support system, whether it's your spouse, your girlfriend, your friends, coworkers, I think, for entrepreneurs, right, we're usually pretty heady people. You get lost in the clouds, right? And there's a danger of not being grounded in reality, and you can start to drink your own Kool-Aid way too much. So there's it was a real delicate balance of, having that kind of self-doubt to keep pushing, but simultaneously also, kind of having faith. And I think part of that is you got to kind of get a little crazy and really delude yourself into thinking like not this, is this going to work? Like this is going to work. Is it going to work tomorrow? I don't know, but it's going to work. And I think when you flip your mindset to one where it not working does not mean failure for you, the mind becomes a different equation. If you're thinking, you come up to like a chasm and you're like, okay, either I can jump over this or I'm going to fail and die, rather than either I'm going to jump over this or I'm not going to die, but I'm going to not succeed, but figure out a way to get that data and learn from that, if you want to call it a mistake, or I call it experience. And, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I think as long as you have food, shelter, and belief in yourself, there's nothing that can really stop you. I mean, there's so many amazing entrepreneurial stories in this country where people literally put it all on the line, right? Like, Vidal Sassoon guy. I mean, the guy was living out of his car twice. I mean, and
how important was music to you during that process? Like your hobby?
Oh, well, yeah, it's kind of like my everything. I played music since I was like 1 year old, took a huge break to become a doctor. That part of the job really, I kind of figured out as the years went on, was kind of soul crushing, because I'm just like naturally a creative person. I grew up in New Orleans. So jazz and Indian music are kind of where I'm.
And good food.
And good food, exactly. So the finer things in life, sensation that makes you feel good. And music really, what I realized actually after the first year, it was so draining because, it was more and people weren't getting as well as we thought they would. And it was just a lot of figuring things out. So, fortunately, people close to me really understand who I am, and they were like, I think you got to start playing piano again. This will probably be good for you. And I reconnected with music, and then now, kind of fast forward almost 2 years, I put out a couple albums. We got a lot of exciting things going on. Really kind of creating a new sound that we are hopefully going to be able to spread to more people, because it's not music just for having a good time. More so, the intention was to use sound as a way to, for lack of a better word, hijack people's minds, right? Because right now there's a lot of stressful stuff going on, and music, I think, is this universal language that no matter your race, creed, anything, it's something that we all feel, and it's something so powerful that I saw this really, amazing video during one of the riots when they first happened. People were freaking out. Some music came on, and literally it was like, like a switch went off, and everybody the anger melted away, and they're dancing. So can we capture that same concept and help people in different life scenarios? So we have a new album coming out called Learn, which we have kind of proven with EEGs, right? So hooking up people with EEGs. I think Nikki's going to hopefully do it in the next couple of days, where you track somebody's brainwaves before the music comes on, then you put the music on, and you see very clear improvement in the signal, meaning one, the brainwaves start to become coherent and organized, but also certain waves like alpha waves and theta waves that are responsible for like the flow state, and also visualizing, visualizing things, right? So when we're trying to internalize, a goal or something, right? Or we want to learn a new task, or learn new material. It's basically kind of putting the mind in the right rhythm to accept new information and be able to thrive and benefit with it. So that one's coming out in the end of the month, and it's really geared towards, there's a lot of kids that are going to be going to school, hopefully not remotely, but a lot of tumult in the world, and we're just trying to make things smoother for everybody.
Hey, how can people find your music? How can people
Sure.
connect with you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah. So the medical practice is www.i2i.md, and the music is called Seeing Sounds. So seeingsounds.com.
Awesome, man. Dr. Abhi, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Ken. Really appreciate it.
Hey, enjoyed it, guys. Yep. You have a good day. Guys, thanks for joining us on the Grow Stack Drive podcast. Dr. Abhi can be found at those two locations on our YouTube channel. I'll also have some information for you in there as well. Man, look forward to connecting with you in the future. And if I need to come down and get hooked up and listen to your music, you let me know.
Yeah, hey, man. And also your shoulder. Don't forget your shoulder.
Yes, I'll do that.
Anytime, seriously.
I appreciate it, Dr. Abhi. Thanks,
buddy.
Have a good one. Guys, thanks for joining us today. Have a blessed day. We'll be off tomorrow. It's my daughter's birthday. And we'll be back Monday with Jay Kinder, the former number one Keller Williams agent in the entire United States of America. Look forward to interviewing Jay, who's now with EXP. It's going to be a great podcast, great interview as we talk about entrepreneurship and the real estate market today. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a